No wonder the Bible is the greatest book ever written, as the stories read are much more than simple stories, but actual accounts of historical events. The people that wrote about the events that unfolded in this book witnessed and observed the actual events, or were given the inspiration by God Himself. As great as the events discussed so far were, these events occurred in the first few hours of human history. The light created on day one of creation further illustrated the majesty of God, as this light was not the sun that we observe in the sky, because it was not created until day 4. Knowing all this, when we read in the beginning God created the heaven and earth, Genesis 1 verse 1, nothing should take us by surprise, as nothing is too big for our God. The darkness that was over the earth in the beginning was countered with the light of God, as the Spirit of God was hovering through the earth, including the darkness. And this goes to show whether on day 1 of creation or present day, God's light shines brighter than any darkness. And in Him there is no darkness. This then is the message which we have heard of Him, and declare unto you, that God is light, and in Him is no darkness at all, as explained in 1 John 1 verse 5. And this was just day 1 of the creation week. Day 1 of the creation week is simple titled day, as it is the first recorded day of human history. Over this particular period of time in Genesis 1 verse 1 through 1:3, we see God busy with creating the heaven and earth, Genesis 1 verse 1, and continuing to shape His new creation, which was without form and void, Genesis 1 verse 2. It's important to point out that without form and void does not mean there was nothing, as God created the heaven and earth from nothing, but rather they were not completed or unfilled. Understanding that God was a carpenter when He walked the earth, it only makes sense that God would continue to work on His creation as He worked to shape His creation and fill it as He saw fit. On the first day of creation, God brought forth light, Genesis 1 verse 3. This light was not the sun, no. But God used this light to separate the darkness that was over the earth at this period in time. God saw what He had done, and saw that it was good, and called the light day, and the darkness night, which made up the first evening and morning of history. Next, on day 2, He created the sky, and God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day, Genesis 1 verse 7-8. The Bible, whether written in antiquity or newer translations, does not use the term sky, but rather Expanse, English Standard Version, Vault New International Version, or firmament, King James Version. For this program, the King James Version is used, which is why firmament is read. God had already created the waters, so He used this sky to separate the water from the water. On day 2, like on day 1, what God brought into existence was spoken, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters," Genesis 1 verse 6. As mentioned earlier, God had already made water before the second day of creation, and a lot of it covered earth before the second day of creation. It goes without saying that I am not a scientist, but God used this water to keep the earth's temperature at a steady level. It also goes without saying that God knew what He was doing way back when, just like He knows what needs to be done today.